Okay, so today's topic is in the beginning, most of the talk will be done by you. I'm just dropping a hint that what is speech actually? Speech is unique to us, and we speak to one another. Like as human beings, we speak to one another. But if I sit alone somewhere and talk, just keep talking, people will think something is wrong with me, right? So I have to have somebody in front of me, especially a human being, so that nobody will suspect that something is wrong. Whatever we can communicate. The speech is between human being to human being. I can speak to animals also, but there is a limitation to that because I don't get response the way I would speak. So, or if I were to sort of uh, go silent, if I go silent, then nobody bothers except other human beings who are close to me. What is wrong with this person? Correct. Why he's not or she is not speaking? So now I leave the floor open to you. I want you to speak. Is speech or the capacity to express yourself in a language, is it divine? Why is it that we need it? And yeah, any
First,
one of you
to
can start.
say, we need to find that sweet spot because going silent also gets people worried, and talking too much also gets people worried. It has happened with me a lot because they're like, "Why do you talk so much?" Then I go quiet. They're like, "What happened? Why are you so quiet?" Yeah,
So
so starting
that
with
means
that.
people expect a balanced speech from one another. Correct. Not too much, not too less. So again, the question remains: why is it like that? Why is it that only human beings have this problem with one another also? So is speech something very divine, or is speech energizing to another one? Why is it that people want you to speak because it energizes them, or you get energized when when someone talks to you?
So
Of course,
as
positively.
yeah, as we say, the vibe isn't right when we meet
Yeah.
somebody or something. So there is that saying that he was or she was very beautiful until she opened her mouth.
Yeah.
So what you say, how you think, and how you put it out, your thoughts makes a lot about what you are and your personality. So speech is, it plays a very important role. But to say, is it divine? I'm not sure because it has come as part of our evolution. Because dolphins have much more evolved brain than humans, and they have transcended the speech and they have gone to sonar. They talk without words, but they still communicate as better as us, as good as us. So that way, I'm not sure if we can define or if we can say speech is divine, but it is a gift and it is something that, you know, one of the most important thing that we have come up with as the link that you had sent, the YouTube video where he says that is one of the most important inventions. So to communicate with another is a gift, I would say. Maybe not divine, but yeah, that is my opinion or thought about this.
Okay. Yes. Others may join.
Hello, sir. Uh,
Yes.
I was when we were talking about balance of speech, the thing that came in my mind was monks. They have
Monks.
monks. They will never speak anything which is not necessary. They will only talk when it is, and that's when it becomes divine. I feel what we in general people talk, it depends on what we are putting message out with our words, that will make it divine or not divine. So that's what came in my mind. And another thing, when you put up the topic, my father used to tell me a story when I was a child, in which the story was Bola Q, in which it gives you an importance that when you know something for sure, then only speak, or there are going to be consequences. If something comes up in Further, I would love to say that story. It was written by my dad just for me, but it is
Hmm.
such an amazing story that it
So please,
gives a
please tell the
challenge
story. Please tell
right
the
now.
story. Yeah, why not?
Okay,
Yeah.
so there was a king who didn't have any son or daughters. Okay, he did many things to have a son or daughter. He went to many, people for that, and nothing happened. Then once a villager tells him about one saint, they like go and meet him, and you will have. So he goes. It was in another village and things like that. Still, he went. When he went, that saint was in a maun avastha, like he was not talking. So he started cleaning the hurt and everything. So after 2 days, he opened his eyes. So he asked king, "Why are you here? You cleaned my hurt, everything. What do you want?" So he says, like, "I don't have a child, so I came to you. Can you help me?" So he's like, "Okay, I will help you. Uh, and that in a year you will have a child." Like, okay, good. He becomes happy. He goes home. Okay, after a year, he has a kid, son. He's ekdam happy like anything. The son starts growing, like bada ho raha hai bacha. 1 year happens, 2 year happens. The child doesn't speak, not a word. Going on like ठीक है, some 3 years, nahi, no word. He starts showing again, around कि like देखो बच्चा हुआ पर बात नहीं कर रहा है, बोलता नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं बोलता है. It keeps happening. Then the king accepts कि like okay, my kid is never going to speak, he has some problem and it can't be solved. The kid becomes of 5 age ka. Okay, now because he can't speak, there is always one soldier with the kid. Okay, so that if anything needs, there is a soldier. One day that Rajkumar is sitting in the garden, he's looking at a tree, and he sees that there is a bird that is sitting quietly because there is a cat behind him. Okay, because if the bird speaks, the cat will catch him. So, and then the bird speaks and the cat catches him. So the Rajkumar says, "Bola kyu?" Because the moment bird uttered a word, the cat caught him. So, and the soldier hears him. "Oh my God, Rajkumar spoke! Rajkumar spoke!" He runs to the king like anything, like Rajkumar spoke. Karke. So king is so happy. He asks his kid, ki, like, "Oh, you spoke!" Like then again, shh, no word. Rajkumar again silent. So uh, he's trying to tell his kid, "You spoke, why are you not speaking in front of me?" and things like that and everything. It keeps on happening. Then the Raja gets angry that the Sipahi has told a lie, so he is going to go into a prison. He goes into the prison. Nothing happens. Then he's like, "इसको फांसी मिलेगी क्योंकि इसने झूठ बोला, राजा से झूठ बोला." The day of the punishment comes, and Raja is talking to the Sipahi that, "Why did you lie to me?" So he's like, "I didn't lie, like I should get a last wish karke." He's like, "What is your last wish?" "I want to talk to Rajkumar alone once." Then okay, that wish is granted. He talks to the Rajkumar, like, "Why, you know that you spoke, I know that you spoke, why are you not speaking in front of your father?" Again he says, "Bola kyu?" "You heard me. What was the need of telling Raja that I spoke karke? You spoke at the wrong time. So now again you have a, like, you are going to face a problem." And the Raja hears this, like his
Okay.
Rajkumar has heard is speaking karke. Then he asks his son, "Why are you doing this to me?" Then he says, like, "I made a mistake a year ago. I was the saint who told you that you will have a son.
Oh, okay.
I that time you didn't have a कि like you will have a son, ये आपके भाग्य में नहीं था." Okay, when I went to gods कि like he should have a son, gods told to me, "बोला क्यों?" Like you just got impressed of him and you granted him a wish. But you didn't see that if he is going to have son or not. You just spoke out of, like, हाँ हो जाएगा करके. So the moral comes to bola क्यों.
Wonderful. No, I can't tell you. I can't ask you now. Boli kyo? You told the story. Anyway, wonderful story. Wonderful. Yeah, that's nice. That's a very interesting. Actually, it's a very philosophic kind of story. Actually, very philosophic. Wonderful. Yes. Okay. अभी ये सोच के सब चुप नहीं रहना है कि बोले क्यों करके. So, इसलिए कुछ बोलो. बोलना जरूरी है.
Oh, also I rewatched the movie Arrival yesterday. If anyone of you
Oh,
watched it.
I haven't seen. I have to see. I have to see it. I have to find time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had forgotten a few scenes of it and I refresh ho gaya abhi. It's like the main character is a linguist and she explains how so aliens come to Earth and they have to communicate. They have their own language. These people have English. So the military guy is like, ask the aliens what is the purpose of their visit. And she's like, it is not that simple. And it's like, why isn't it simple? So she writes, what is your purpose on Earth? Question mark. She explains how she breaks down that sentence. She's like, they should understand what a question is. They should understand you or your. So it is individual or complete group. You should understand if they will understand what is a question. Do they understand that? And what is purpose? Like intent, do they understand what intent is? So just to ask what is your purpose on earth, they have to know simplest of simple words like first standard say 10th standard tak, whatever vocabulary you get, they should understand that. And we should be able to understand their answer if they understand the question. So we have to build a vocabulary. She explains it so well that scene. You guys have to watch it. Don't miss.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Good. See, this actually applies to all languages. If someone is speaking, sitting in front of you Chinese, we are just dumbstruck. Correct? We just don't know what is happening unless you know that language. Why Chinese? Any language that you do not know, and people are having an animated conversation, you're just out of it. Like, right? So language is very specific to people who understand that language. That's the beauty of language, actually. And there are so many languages. And perhaps we don't know. Animals must be talking. How do we know? Using a different frequency of expression also. That is also possible. We are using a certain frequency of as language for communications, which we can hear and we can understand. But that may not be the case with other creatures. From cockroaches to elephants, they all must be having certain other frequencies of communication. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Neeta? Bolo kuch.
Yes, sir. So this I want to just tell from my experience. I went to Vipassana 3-4 times, and it is complete silence for 10 days, and 11th day we get a chance to speak. So what these 10 days happens in a silence? There is actually with meditation and all that, there is a lot of cleansing on a different layers of oneself. And when you get a chance to speak, means after silence, when one speaks, it is divine. When that silence speaks with some work, some background work, and you work on the different layers of yourself, you are having very good clarity. So that time I felt it was really divine. And when you speak for the good of others, when it is not necessary, you don't speak. When it is not a good time, you don't speak. When it is not necessary to share, you don't share. So when you follow certain norms for speaking and you speak what comes to you from the divine, I think it is divine. So yeah.
Very nice. That's
it was very good experience.
Thought,
we were 850 people doing that doing that course in one session, means in one 10-day course. And it was noble silence. It was noble silence means you cannot speak with your gestures, or you are not even talking with your eyes. So that kind of silence, it is called in Hindi आर्य मौन बोला जाता है. So जब बात करने को मिलता है, you speak for the good of others, and that is really wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, I have heard of this Vipassana sessions. I've never been, but I've heard from some of my friends. What you said is correct. It's when you break that silence, you realize that how divine it is to speak. So that's what I meant by asking you that question. Is there divinity in language? I mean,
is it divine? Is it a divine in power? Your words.
In your words.
And words
are
follow
divine.
Your feelings. And so more clean the feelings and more pure your heart, automatically that divinity increases. Means I really feel like that. The more clean you are as a human, there is a difference. Like Abdul Kalam also said about this, that words make your character. Means there is a long sentence, but I just remember this much. But yes, it makes a character.
That is the reason we wait for a saint to say something.
Yes.
Correct. If you are in the presence of a saint, you wait.
Yes.
You may not speak for quite some time, but when they speak, you are attentive because there is divinity in that, in what they say. Correct. Yeah.
I have been to certain Jain monks, particularly one of them. I sat for 1.5 hours. He didn't look at me. He didn't had a word with me. But that 1.5 hour, I cannot forget until whatever communicated without anything. Still, I remember. Means there is very different blessings. So
yes. Who is next?
So I would like to share. Good morning.
Morning.
So for me, I started talking at a little later age comparatively to, the other kids. And it sort of worried my mother. And before even I could start talking, I was sent to a few classes here and there. Like my mom, she thought that I won't be able to express myself. So I was sent to music class, dance class, and drawing class. So at least I know, like, I have a medium to sort of express myself. But even when I started talking, say at the age of 4 or 5, maybe, even that time I used to be a very shy kid. So I wouldn't open up into situations much easily. And there was one thing that used to get me highlighted here and there. Is like whenever I used to open my mouth, it would be usually jokes coming out. So I used to be the humorous kid back then. But then later I sort of figured out how confidence works, how you can self project, and how you can speak better. I was also sent to debate classes, elocution classes, this, that. And say, I think after my ninth or 10th, I had caught up on a very bad habit. So I had started reading about psychology, manipulation, and persuasion, stuff like that, how to sort of hypnotize or get into that state of hypnosis and stuff like that. And apparently that was the age where I had started lying a lot. And what happened was, so this is one thing I really would like to tell people. Like, after a point, words lose their meaning, especially when you've been using those words to, I don't know, just make use of people, or make use of the the situations and stuff. Like, the words, they lose their meaning, but at the same time you also understand the correct words that you need to use in order to control that situation, right? So yes, I mean, when it comes to divinity in words, where I find it is, when I'm going to temples, when I hear the chants, it's in those specific, words and those specific syllables, those sounds is where I find that divine kind. Otherwise, just talking to people and, even at this point, it becomes very pointless for me because then again, at this stage of life, I get quite irritated very easily. If I find somebody very stupid and he's coming and trying to converse with me and making no point at all, and this is like not a conversation where he's trying to learn anything. He's just coming and talking. So that sort of pisses me. I then again I sort of avoid people, interacting with people right now. So yes, I mean that's how it has worked for me, and I did some research on primordial sounds, the initial sounds of the universe. And I don't know, somehow I'm, using them to create a few forms. And it's like a small self exercise I have given myself. So let's see where it takes us. Yes.
Okay, so you said you like the chants or what you hear in temples, chanting, correct? You like
Yes.
that. You feel that there's divinity in them. They are called mantras, correct? Mantra,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
chanting of mantra, and they are
Yes.
actually words, but spoken out or uttered with a certain kind of rhythm.
Yes.
The words themselves may have some power. The phonetic nature of the mantra may have some power, but they are also recited or spoken out with a certain kind of rhythm. Now, rhythm is part of music. Does that mean that words spoken with a musical rhythm or music itself is divine?
Yes.
Musical words are divine.
Any day, sir.
Any
So
day. So
I'll
music is divine, right?
totally.
Okay, okay. So if you put words in a particular musical format, it becomes divine.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's a good
And
thought. Hmm.
also the words that you're using while you're putting into that musical format, the
Hmm.
syntax, the way you have
Hmm.
placed those words, right?
Yes, yes,
That and
sure, sure.
also the phonetics, the kind of sound that word is making.
Hmm.
So then again, you must have seen those, the Babajis going like sha 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 sha. They make that sha, word very this thing emphasized to get rid of bad spirits and stuff like that. Then when you look
Hmm.
at the Buddhist monks chanting, they, uh, you know, ma is a very common syllable. Like, um, uh, I don't remember the words, but it sort of brings a certain peace to your mind. And I mean, yeah, in that sense, again, I mean, the kind of syllables that you're using, it again puts you in a certain bhav, it puts you in a certain, state of mind, even listening those words. So we have this thing, I'm a Jain. So we have this thing called Paryushan once in a year, wherein all the Jains are either fasting or, doing these different activities. And at the end of it, we have this thing called Pratikaman. So Pratikaman is basically a three to 4 hour seating where you read this whole text, this whole like this thick book is sort of read by the Maharaj Sahib. And so what even right now what has happened is this is something that I have noticed. So back when I was younger and I used to go to Pratikaman, they used to chant everything at a at a pace where people would tend to understand it, like what they're chanting. Now what they do is everybody knows that everybody is in hurry. Now they are just running through the text, like they'll start reading first page and then maybe within 2 hours the whole book will be over. So that's the pace that they have taken up nowadays, at least
So
in
it means that speech, whatever you speak, should have a rhythm and pace, beat, rhythm, correct?
Hmm, true.
Yeah, okay. So that
And
adds to the divinity of the spoken word.
yes.
So for
So
words to become divine, they need to be musical in nature. Any kind of musical in nature. Okay, that's a interesting thought. Okay, good.
so like have keeping that thought also. I had a friend who used to stammer.
Okay, yes, interesting. Correct.
Just like you said, no, we had an annual day competition or annual day performance. I don't remember. We were quite young, but I still remember him coming on the stage, and he was like going through a certain therapy himself, and he just came on the stage and he sung his dialogue instead of sort of saying it out. And that was the first time anybody must have heard him say something so clear at the first go. I mean, it's true. I mean, if you add music to the words that you're speaking, it does make them
That's
a little.
interesting.
So yes,
That's
and then
interesting.
it almost got rid of his stammering. So it was a different experience for all of us to hear. Otherwise, he would take like 2 minutes or 3 minutes to say a 1 minute dialogue. So
So no, actually, for people who stammer, music is considered a therapy.
yes, it
Way of
does.
There
getting,
was
yeah, it's
one
therapeutic.
person who
Yeah.
came up on this Sarigamapa singing competition, Kannada singing competition, who
Mhm.
stammered, but he used to sing beautifully.
Okay.
Right after singing, when talking to the judges, again it starts. So it was like that. So I've seen this
Okay. Okay.
behavior.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So music adds divinity to words. We can conclude
Rhythm,
that.
rhythm adds tempo to your sentences.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
And also what matters, I think, even while talking, is the intellect that you hold. I
Mm.
mean, then again, like Mitra said, if you gotta stay silent, you gotta stay silent. I mean, it doesn't bola kyun, matlab, is- this is something that I have faced in last few years, and I mean, I'm trying to control myself. So I've seen myself talking a lot, and then going a little bit overboard, and and then sort of pissing off people. So I just like sticking to the points now, and then just like getting my things done, and that's it.
But then one question: why is it that little children who, when they start speaking and when they speak a lot, people love it? A child who speaks maybe tutla ke bhi baat karta hoga, must be. So you want the child to speak more, tutlata hai, tutlati hai, whatever it is.
Here,
But
what I
then
feel is
you want to talk
here,
and you want to hear the child say things. Why is it like that?
sir. Hello,
Yes.
hello. Yeah,
Arun. Yes.
yeah, sir. What I feel here, like I'm experiencing this from since there is a small baby in our house, and I'm
Okay. Yeah.
experiencing things.
Yeah. Same here. I'm experiencing with my
Yeah,
grandson. Yeah. That's why I
I
asked this question.
there is a lot of innocence when they are speaking. Uh, any word,
Okay.
whatever they feel, whether it is anger or whether they are crying, there is a sort of innocence in whatever they are expressing. And we feel
Yes.
like, okay, ये चिढ़ रहा भी है तो यार चिढ़ो उसको और गुस्सा दिलाते, like we love it. वो जो इनोसेंस होता है ना, वो इनोसेंस में अभी द बेबी कांट स्पीक मीन्स भाई को भी एक लड़का हुआ है, सो उसके साथ जब बात करता हूँ तो ही डजंट अंडरस्टैंड, पर जब मैं आवाज निकालता हूँ ही लुक्स एट मी एंड ही स्टार्ट laughing at me, and he's like जब गाड़ी बाहर निकालते ही comes out and like देखता नहीं क्या, like he wants to come and sit in the car and like whatever, and he shouts at me like means he's
Right.
calling me somewhat, he doesn't know the language here,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
we can understand like he's calling me so that I can go
Yes.
and pick him and sit with him in the car, like something that happens what I'm facing this. Second, sir, what I feel is language without expression there is no language, I think. It means if you don't
Mm.
express your feelings or express your actions, I think language has no, like same here. Uh, I do remember about the movie or the serials. What I used to see in my childhood days was Charlie and Chaplin movies.
Mhm.
They never speak anything. There was just actions going on, and the movie was like we used to enjoy that. Even Lord and Hardy.
Mhm.
Hmm.
इस वहाँ पे कुछ एक्शंस नहीं है, मीन्स एक्शंस है, स्पीच बहुत कम है, लेकिन हमें समझ में आ रहा है कि उसको क्या कहना है, व्हाट दे आर डूइंग एंड व्हाट दे आर वांट टू से, एंड वी एंजॉय द सीरियल्स. दैट्स व्हाट आई फील, सर.
That is sign language. Sign language.
Sign languages, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it is body language, sir.
Body language. Yes. Body language is
Oh,
a,
yeah, body
another
language.
kind of sign language. Signs. Body expresses in so many ways. So, which we are able to connect with emotions and feelings and actions, etc. Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
I think like the answer to your question could be maybe the kind of innocence that the kids have while talking, and also the sound of their voice
Mhm.
is something that so innocence, because see, being at a very later age, even if it is 16, 17, 18, whatever it is, even if you are 9 or 10, you have seen the world in a particular manner, and you know a few things about the world. This newborn child or this new person that has entered has barely seen anything, so it is very even you get curious that how that small thing is going to perceive the world, and how it's going to express itself, and in that process, I think that is what people like about kids, like when they talk, the honesty in their words, and especially the part where they're revealing things what's happening at home. So yeah, so
Yeah,
that
their observation about life around them. Correct.
yes, yes.
And they come out many a times. Kids come out with fantastic observations about life around them, which we never expect a child to come out with. So that makes, so there is a certain kind of different kind of divinity in a child's language or ways of expression, right?
Yes.
Yes. Niti,
हेलो गुड मॉर्निंग सर.
morning.
सर मेरे घर पे सर एक छोटा सा एक्सपीरियंस है. सर मेरे पास एक
Mhm.
डॉग है
Mhm.
घर पे, पैट है. सर जैसे हम लोग लैंग्वेज डिफरेंस बोलते हैं ह्यूमन और एनिमल्स के बीच का. सर मुझे लगता है कि लैंग्वेज का कोई ज्यादा डिफरेंस नहीं होता. जैसे सर संगति बोलते हैं जिसके साथ हम शुरू से बचपन से रहते हैं, तो जैसे उनकी लैंग्वेज हो जाती है तो लाइक सेम लैंग्वेज हो जाती है. तो सर जैसे मेरा डॉग है, जैसे बोलते हैं उनका डिफरेंट लैंग्वेज. सर जैसे मैं चिढ़ाती हूँ, ये मेरी मम्मी है, ये मेरी मम्मी, तो वो मम्मी के पास जाके फिर मम्मी के पास जाके वो चिपक जाता है. फिर मेरी मम्मी फिर हमें किसी को भी वहां आसपास नहीं आने देता है, और फिर वो हमें बाइट करता है कि आप मेरी मम्मी को कैसे छू रहे हो. तो सर मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जो एनिमल्स और ह्यूमन के बीच का भी जो डिफरेंस है, सर जैसे संगति वो बचपन से अभी लाइक 5 इयर्स का हो गया है, तो सर शुरू से हम उसके आसपास हिंदी मतलब लैंग्वेज जो है हम ह्यूमन लैंग्वेज ही यूज करें, बट उसके बारे में हम बात करते हैं, ही नोस, हम बोलेंगे उसके बारे में बात करेगा, वो अपना कान उठाता है. तो सर मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि ज्यादा डिफरेंस नहीं होता है ह्यूमन और डॉग के लैंग्वेज में.
Okay, that means there is divinity both ways.
Yes, sir.
Sound, language, whatever it is, the language, sound, the way it is uttered, etc., has got a kind of a divine connection between animals and humans also. Right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I would like to talk a little about language first. So since childhood, since when I was put into school, my favorite subject has been language always. All the three languages that we got to learn. The reason is there are stories in it. So that was quite interesting for me. So I would just read it again and again. So we didn't have phone, like personal phones at that time. So it was a means for like entertainment for me. So I would just read it again and again. So that's how I got better with like writing language, and my vocabulary kind of improved. So it was not a conscious effort, but it came to me just by reading those stories. The grasp of how to write, how to structure a sentence. It was not more grammatically for me, but it was more organic for me. Just by reading, I got to learn many things. Uh, and if I talk about sound, so uh, like I started doing yoga around 4 years back. So Sadhguru told us about the importance of the sound arm. It is supposed to be a beach mantra or beach sound, root sound, which can be uttered by any animal. Like if you like hear even a dog, it will be like something like even the cow will be like moo. So these are basic sounds which can be like uttered by any animal because they don't require the tongue the use of tongue. So only we as humans use like tongue for saying something. It is just manipulation of these three sounds. Yeah. So I also read like mantras are various like arrangement of various sounds in a way that they will bring certain uh, kind of energy to a space if they are chanted in the right sense, in the right way, for right like for right number of times. Like so that's what I learned about mantras. So that way they are important. And these mantras are even used for consecration, pran pratishtha in temples. So that way we know that sound can be like very powerful if it is used in the right way. And nowadays, if you like just sift through YouTube, you can see a lot of channels that are like providing something that is called as binaural beats, isochronic tones, music in certain frequencies. Like 528 is called solfeggio, 432 hertz is called I don't know what it is called, but I think it is Earth's frequency. So there are this music 1 hour long, 2 hour long, 8 hour long sounds which are like there for reaping certain benefits. So I think uh, there is a lot of research that has been done with regards to sound, like how to harness the benefit of sounds in like putting a melody in certain way, in certain frequency. So yeah, that's it for myself.
Okay, so the idea of this discussion was to understand whether if we compare, if we if we take that we human beings are also animals, we are just part of the animal world, but no other animal has made this kind of progress in the world. Am I right? The way human beings have taken over nature, you can even say that totally made nature subservient to. We are so powerless compared to many other animals. Human beings are so powerless, don't have any other the kind of strengths which so many animals have. But at the same time, why we have been successful is perhaps language. What else can you ascribe to the success of human beings in the animal kingdom compared to all the other animals? Is it language? Is it the way we communicate which is responsible for all the success that we have had compared to all the other animals? That is a question which we have to. Uh, that's the reason why I asked you this question. So, can we call it a divine will, divine wish that there is one creature on earth which is capable of structuring the sounds which they produce in such a manner that you become so progressive? Is that true? Look
Yes,
at
sir.
any other animal. No other animal, no other creature, no other insect, no other bird is able to achieve anything. Though they also, we know, they also make sounds, they also communicate. But what is distinctively different in human beings is that we also make sound, but we have made sound. We have learned to make sound in such a manner that uh, we are able to express our thoughts in a very coherent manner to another human being and put it to creative use. So today's topic is language and creative expression. So I wanted to have this discussion in which you all had to participate. Because I'm going to speak about language and creative expression. Okay.
I just have very little to add. like uh, what differentiates music and noise? Like you said, rhythm is one of the things, but the rhythm of the silence between the music is what sets apart music from noise, right? So the
Fantastic. Yes,
silence
that's right. That's
what
right.
is notes. Similarly, in language, it's true that we kind of evolved because of language, but now words are very close to becoming noise in our minds, which is why silence and Maunavrata is so important. And what is divinity? Divinity is something that we associate with God. And what is that? That which brings us peace and joy in our innermost. And for we can find divinity in anything, and to find divinity in languages when there's a sort of balance. So I would say language is only a tool, be it any language, be it body language or even the words. It's just a tool to communicate. So I was listening to this one person called Chamu Shastri, Krishna Shastri, who has started Speak Sanskrit movement in India. So he was saying during his initial days, he used to travel to villages to kind of spread the awareness. And he'd gone to this one school in Karnataka, and he said to the children that he'll tell them a story in Sanskrit. And he told them a story, a short story, and the children were all amused. And at the end of the story, he asked them, "What did you understand?" And they were actually able to accurately understand what he said in Sanskrit, even though they didn't know the language. Whereas the adults who were present in the same room, they didn't understand a thing. So he has said, we have the capacity to understand any language despite not knowing the words. It's just that you have to be conscious and aware of what the other person is trying to communicate, and then words become secondary. So the base point he being language is a tool that sometimes I think it helped us evolve, but right now I think we give it it's overrated. And that's where I think taking a step back and practicing silence kind of and giving more value to the words that we speak help us regain the kind of importance that language has. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay. So, but I suppose, can we underline the fact that language is that tool which only humans have? I mean, structured tool which humans have created for themselves, which is responsible for whatever evolution and development has happened on Earth. Correct. Without language, we would be
Yes,
nowhere. And there are so many languages, not just one. It's thousands of languages.
correct.
Correct.
I agree, but
Yeah.
we've given it a certain form, but that's to say that animals don't have a language. I think they,
No,
for
they do
all we know,
have. They of course are.
yeah,
Yeah.
it might be
Correct.
far superior to ours. I
Yes.
mean,
Correct.
even trees for that matter, even though they don't have any kind of visible form of communication, if there's if there's a attack or something happening on one tree, or if there's a herd of elephant that's kind of trampling upon a certain area, then the trees sends signals, and the entire area, the leaves become bitter, and that's how elephants move to other region. So that's also a form of language, though it doesn't fit in our stereotypical what we call as
Yeah.
language. So I
For us,
feel
making of the sound is language. Like it is a different kind of
yes,
vibration, whereas they have different kind of vibration
correct.
for communication. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So let me get into this today's discussion. The role which language plays in creativity. So here, the relationship between language and creative expression. So, so we all know that the first human beings, or in the process of evolution, it is to express our response to natural world, whatever is happening around us, we developed language. In fact, animals also have language. We discussed all this yesterday. But in many ways, because we respond so many different ways to natural events around us, human beings, that actually helped in shaping of language, and that too in different parts of the world in so many different ways. So I'm just referring to one of my favorite quotes, which I think I have mentioned to you earlier also. It is a quote from Vedanta philosophy. Again, I'm using this once again here because I asked you this question, or I asked all of you to speak about divinity in language, whether language is divine. That's what we are discussing. So if language is divine, how we can prove that language is actually divine? Again, I'm going back to that one very interesting statement in Vedantic philosophy, which says God sleeps in minerals. And I think I have mentioned this to you earlier also. If we say God as a power, it sleeps in minerals, it means that almost 99.9% of this entire universe is matter, is God. It doesn't move, it is immovable, it is a kind of energy which is sleeping in minerals, but wakes in trees. God sleeps in minerals, wakes in trees, walks in animals, but then the same divine God thinks in humans, and because God thinks in us, or the expression of the thoughts which we have, we express the thoughts. Not only think, but we express in so many different ways using sound as a medium, and because of that we have created our own culture, so many different cultures all over the world. Man thinks, woman thinks, and the thought is converted into sound, and sound which is structured in so many different ways by different communities all over the world, has created all these kinds of variety of cultures all over the world. So this one statement from Vedanta proves it all, that there is something very special about all of us, human beings on this earth, which makes human beings think and express the thoughts in a kind of a medium which we call language, and very structured. So thus cultures are created. So different cultures, we have so many different cultures coexisting today all over the world. There was a time when we did not travel, but yet different cultures grew in different parts of the world. But when we started traveling, we developed different ways of traversing distances. Cultures merged with each other and new cultures are born. We know all about it because we have been keeping a track of history of mankind for all these years, right? But there is a relationship between language and culture, which is a little complex. Because if you take a look at one language, it is useful for a particular specific group of people, but a different language which is useful for another specific group of people, there may be a lot of things which are common between the expressions between people. Some things may be uncommon. One culture may have certain attributes or certain qualities which may be very different from that of another culture of a group of people. But what connects them is the language which they use. So when you interact with another language, another person's language, supposing you learn another language, you are a Maharashtrian, you try to learn Bengali as a language, you may become expert in that language. But in spite of learning that language, you will not understand the nuances of the culture of Bengalis. Because you may learn how to speak Bengali, you may learn how to write Bengali, you may know how to read Bengali. But unless you understand the nuances of the culture which is born out of the use of that language from childhood and through successive generations, when a language is used, a culture is born. So see, for example, if you say 3-4 languages, we all speak English, but an English person speaking person's culture, someone whose mother tongue is English, you need to experience it by living with them to understand what actually that culture is all about. Though we may be experts at speaking English, but unless you meet Englishmen, unless you communicate with them, unless you sit with them, you will not understand the meaning of their culture. So when you interact with another language, it means that you are interacting with the culture which is speaking that language. And thus language is the foundation of civilization, which consists of so many different type of cultures. Civilized human beings are, maybe we can say that humanity is civilized all over the world. But this civilized humanity has got so many different cultures, and each culture has got a language. language, though it is the foundation of the entire civilization, it is also the foundation of different cultures all over the world. That's the relationship of language and culture. And cultures are born because of language. If there was no language, no culture would be born. Perhaps that is what makes language a very unique phenomenon, especially among human beings. So, what is the function of language as part of a culture? So language, we say that language is used for communication, but beyond communication, there are some very interesting function of any language. It transmits values, laws, cultural norms, even taboos, what to do, what not to do. All these things are actually transmitted from one human being to another human being in a culture. So language is not just merely a tool of communication, but it transmits all these things from one generation to another generation. Values, laws, cultural norms, taboos, do this, don't do that, and so on. So, so it actually, language influences the personal identity of all those who are living within that culture and creates boundaries of behavior. What is what is done in one culture may not be done. For example, very simple. You see, we all speak English. Most of us, many Indians speak English. Even the most advanced Indians speak English. Correct. There are Indians who speak only English. Am I right? You agree on this? There are so many Indians who speak only English. But can you tell me one behavioral aspect which even Indians who speak a lot of English and only English haven't got it from purely English speaking or Englishmen or English people? A habit which still they haven't got. Can you tell me that? Which is part of the culture. And unless you are born and brought up in that culture, you will not be able to do it. What is it? Anybody who can? It's a very important actually aspect of expression of human emotion.
So I didn't get your question.
See, we all speak English, correct? And many
Mhm.
of us in our country speak English perhaps better than Englishmen also, right?
Mhm.
But we have not imbibed a very simple way of expression of emotion which Englishmen have, or English speaking people have, or Western people have. English is a Western language, right? We dare not use, we don't do it at all actually. It's an expression of emotion by emotion, or expression of affection among Western society, which we Indians, though we have learnt English, we speak a lot of English, but we don't do it. We don't do it at all. I have not seen anybody doing in public. Have you ever seen anybody kissing in public? A man and a woman in India?
No.
Even so
They
look at it.
usually,
What
when they get caught, they either like push themselves like apart or something
no,
like that.
yeah, so look at it. But if you go to a Western country, it is so common expression
Yes.
of affection. Correct. It is the one sign of expression of love, deep love and affection between sexes, between a man and woman. And that means in that culture, they are born with that expression. Englishmen, Western people are born with that expression of emotion, which we cannot imbibe it. So that is culture. So even if we learn a language in the best possible manner, or better than the language which is spoken by the original folks, culture is something very, very different. Okay. So this is something to be understood, that it is very difficult or almost near impossible to imbibe the essence of a culture of a people who have had their language as the fundamental root of their culture, right? English is the root of the Western culture, but we are not able to imitate them in their ways in our life. Okay, so that's a function of language, that to create a culture. Okay, now let us look at there's one statement which I think I have put in the previous uh, slide, the last statement. It is true that all religions developed after the development of language. You talk about religions, right? Human beings first developed language, first developed communication with one another, and it took several decades or several centuries perhaps for religions to grow. So let us look at what is religion, the relationship of religion to language. Let's look at the three fundamental, most popular religions of the world. And you are speaking about it. Some of you spoke about the word Om, which is defined by Hindu scripture as being the primordial sound of creation, considered the original vibration of the universe. And uh, and by chanting Om, we can transform the mind and the senses. Om, or the word, the Hindu dharma, or Indian thinking, Indian philosophy, or Sanatana Dharma, what you call it, we say that the word Om was born. Om is the first word uttered. And the chanting of Om can lead to Samadhi. And, there's so much of philosophy associated with the first word Om, and the significance of the development of the language, which is unique to our country. Okay. The first word is Om. Now, what is interesting is that other religions also have their own first word, which is actually the word is the fundamental basis of language. Word means sound, creation of sound. No language can exist without sound. Sign language or body language is different, but primarily all the languages need sound as the fundamental uh, uh, reason behind it. So, if in Hinduism it is Om, uh, you know, do you know the history of Muhammad or history of Islam, how Islam was born? This is that hill, Mount Hira it is called, where Muhammad had gone for meditation. It was in the 14th century or 13th century. Muhammad used to visit Mecca, Medina. This is that hill, and there is a cave there, which is considered a very sacred cave by Muslims. Muhammad went for meditation here, and as the story or the reality goes, he meditated there for 23 years, and he came out an enlightened person, and he recited a message to the people of his tribe, and he said, these are Allah's words, correct? This is what Allah, through angel Jibril, gave him all these edicts to be followed, like behavioral aspects of how a Muslim should lead life and so on, and which finally became the holy book Quran. So whatever he uttered, he said, these are words uttered by Lord to me, Allah to me. And again, words, these are the words uttered. That means there is a presupposition here that God also has a language, right? God also speaks to you. God is speaking to you. Speaking what? Speaking in a language. That means that there is an assumption that gods also have a language. We thought till now that language is a creation of human beings. So this means that religions developed by assuming that God speaks to you in a language. So in Islam, in Hinduism, it is there language, use of language by gods or gods representatives, or all the gods pantheon we have in Hinduism. Same thing in Islam also. God spoke through an angel. Angel spoke to him, to Muhammad, put the sacred words into his mind, and he came and spoke to his people that these are the sacred words, sacred things which we have to follow in our life. And then Islam was born. Another religion was born. Let us look at the third religion, that is Christianity. There again, if you look the narrative of Genesis is like that, the Bible, that God's first words were, God spoke that let there be light. If you read the Bible, if you read the Genesis, book of Genesis, etc., they're all words, but these words, let there be light, God spoke. And God spoke to Adam, God spoke to Eve. Spoke means what? Communicated means what? Language. So we are presupposing divinity to the act of communicating through words or sound or language in all religions, irrespective of what religion we follow or any human being follows. There is a presupposition that God speaks. God speaks what? God speaks a language in which that particular religion is born. So this is what I mean by that language actually developed first, and the religions developed based on the languages which human beings sort of created as part of their culture. So ultimately, it is all culture. Even religion is a culture which grew among people, a different kind of aspect of culture. A religion is nothing but a different aspect of culture which is grown among groups of people by way of communication using a particular kind of language which they develop. So culture gets influenced by different shared experiences. Every human being has a experience, and when they share their experiences of environment and they create history, it grows over a period of time. It grows as a culture. So we have a culture of Indians, a culture of Westerners, a culture of people who live in the Middle East, a culture of Chinese. And when we meet them, we sometimes cannot adjust with that culture. We take time to adjust with the culture of the people when we meet a different kind of person who comes from a different culture. So language created and shaped by the needs of the culture as it changes. So the language creates culture, behaviors create culture, religion also becomes part of culture. The religious belief systems which human beings create, that is also part of the culture with language as the fundamental basis. Okay, so now let us consider the importance of language as a shared experience. What kind of creative activities we do today using language? Let us look at that. We create poetry. In all languages, we create poetry. In all languages, we create fiction, stories. In all languages, we create movies, songs, ballads. And fundamental basis of all these creative expressions are language. So language finds its expression in creative manner, whatever may be that language, in maximum in poetry, fiction, storytelling, movies, songs, ballads, and uh, telling of histories, telling our past to the future generation. We talk about the past to the next generation. We try to teach. In teaching also we use language. We use language in so many ways, but maximum in expressing in the form of fiction or storytelling, expressing in the form of poetry, which is poetry is nothing but essence of our emotions expressed in poetry. Movie making, which is a relatively new art form, say 100 or 150-year-old art form. We use language. Songs, of course, for instance, ancient times we create songs, and we have been creating songs using language. And ballads. Ballads are like folk songs. Okay, so but at the same time, other creative expressions like dance, traditional architecture, or art, language plays a secondary role. The role that language plays in performing arts like dance or architecture or other forms, or even in art, are just in the form of terminologies. Dance has got terminologies which are nothing but words which come from a particular language. So if we have Bharatanatyam as a dance form, we have terminologies associated with different postures, different mudras, which come from the language within which this Bharatanatyam dance has evolved. So if you look at Western dance, the terminologies used there are based on the English language, which is at the fundamental root of creation of that kind of dance forms. But only terminologies. Language doesn't affect very deeply performing arts or even architecture also. So this is where in architecture, which is a visual expression of manual skills of people, and today machine skills of people, like manual and machine skills both are used for creating architecture. It is a built form. Where is the expression of language there? Is there a language of architecture? We use it only for as terminologies. Like say we say column or khamba or column, beam. Structural parts are given certain names in different languages in different ways. But that's it. But we also say that there is a language of architectural creation. That is, we talk in terms of form and appearance. They're all related to appearance actually, or movement of sun and wind and the different kinds of tangible and intangible qualities of a built form. We assign some words to express them. That's all. So it is architecture. In architecture, language is used as terminologies. In dance and other performing arts, language is used as a terminology for creative expressions. So this is the role of language in different types of creative expressions. Now I'm going to show you, some examples. I don't know if you have gone through all this, but then some examples I'll give you of language and creative expression. If you, some of the classic examples are very ancient, like scriptures, whether if you read Ramayana or Bible or Quran, language is used in a very effective manner for creative expressions in all this. For example, if you look at Ramayana, we know we have got two types of Ramayana in our country prevalent. One is the Valmiki Ramayana, and the other is the Ramcharitmanas, or the Ramayana created by Tulsidas. Uh, Tulsidas Ramayana is in a kind of a ballad form. That means you can sing it, whereas Valmiki Ramayana cannot be sung. They have to be uh, uh, sort of expressed as in a different manner. So, but the meanings are the same. So, if you look at Ramayana, if you read Ramayana, I'm just showing you some examples. I'm not going to read it out. I'll share it with you. You should try to read and read more from, you can download these things and read and try and understand how through language there is expression of uh, built forms in Ramayana itself, or architecture. Ramayana has got certain parts, especially in Yuddhakand, where Hanuman visits Sri Lanka, goes to Lanka, and comes back. He gives an explanation of what he saw over there. When he returns back to Rama, he tells Rama what he saw over there, what all he saw. And that's a wonderful expression in the language. So here you have the English translation, and when you read this, much is lost in translation. But if you know the language, original language of Valmiki Ramayana or of Tulsi Ramayana, it's the same thing, which is being expressed in the form of that particular language, built forms and activities of people in Sri Lanka. So language is finds a very interesting creative expression to explain what you go and see and come back. See, there was no camera, there was nothing to bring back what you actually see. So in ancient times, in the absence of any of these technologies, words were the only way you could express what you see, what you have seen. So storytelling became an art form. You express in such a manner that a person can understand. So look at Valmiki Ramayana, look at different parts of the Yuddhakanda. You will find very interesting explanation of the built forms, the structures which Hanuman saw in Sri Lanka. This is from the Valmiki Ramayana. And next, I'm showing you from Ramcharitmanas, just some parts. I'll leave it with you for you to read and understand, because my reading is not going to help you understand this. You have to read and meditate on it, provided you know this language. Of course, English, when you read, you will understand. But when you read in a chand form, Kanaka Koti, Vichitramani Krita, Sundarayatan Ghana, you have to understand that language. If you don't understand that Hindi, that Khadi Boli, or the colloquial Hindi, you will not understand it. But then at the same time, the translation in English is there. You will understand what uh, the author of this wonderful piece of work is trying to express. Okay, so this is all based on, and of course, a lot of painters have expressed what Hanuman saw there, and you are seeing here three different expressions. One is a visual expression, that there is one in one language, the expression of architecture. Third is another language, the expression of architecture, built form, and the environment in Sri Lanka, expressed through through Ramayana, which is one of the most ancient texts which humanity has had, thousands of year old texts, which has continued in Shruti and Smriti form, but passed on from generation to generation, which still exists. Now let me come to fiction. Do you all read novels?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Have you heard of Daphne du Maurier?
No,
Have you
sir.
heard of her? No. So du Maurier was an English woman. You see her here with her husband and 3 kids. She belonged to a sort of a royal family. That means her husband was a very important person in 1900 in British government, and I mean he was one of the officials. So, and she was basically a homemaker. She was just a wife, but to pass time she used to write. she was a very sensitive person. She was a little eccentric also, because she used to love loneliness. If you read her life history, it's very interesting. She used to love loneliness, because in loneliness she used to sort of, she felt that the environment speaks to her. So she was very good at writing. So she picked up this habit of writing, and she published some of the finest novels, very expressive in language, in her language, English language. In fact, her description of architecture is fascinating. Though she was not an architect, she was just a writer. The way she would uh, write about architecture of the buildings, or even of the natural environment, is fascinating in her novel. She wrote some 15, 20 novels, all of them wonderful and worth reading. So she had this home called Menabili, where she lived. She used this home for one of her novels called Rebecca. Now you tell me whether you have heard of Rebecca. Rebecca was a novel written by Daphne du Maurier, and it was made into a wonderful movie. This novel came out in 1939, and in this novel, she changed the name of the house from Manderley to Manderley. The house is called Manderley, which she describes so beautifully in the novel. And Alfred Hitchcock, have you heard of Alfred Hitchcock? Very good
Yes.
suspense thriller movie maker. He converted this novel itself is a very interesting suspense thriller kind of format. Very brilliant novel about a woman and her experience in a huge house, a mansion called Manderley. And in 1940, Alfred Hitchcock made this movie. It's a wonderful movie made in 1940, black and white, worth seeing for the sheer uh, ingenuity of Alfred Hitchcock in creating very suspenseful movie out of the script created by Daphne du Maurier. So I would advise you not to see the movie first, read the book first, then read the movie, and then watch the movie, because then you will be able to connect between two creative expressions of language. The first creative expression of language is the novel itself, and the next creative expression is the expression called movie, which is created after creating a script and creating the building, or finding a building which suits the description of Rebecca, of Du Maurier in the movie Rebecca. Rebecca is the name of a lady who lives in this mansion called Manderley. So this is one which came. Now, incidentally, Rebecca recently was recreated again by Netflix. So the movie is there in Netflix, not the 1940 movie. 1940 movie you will have to hunt on YouTube, but the current Rebecca is there on released in 2020, just 2 years back on Netflix. It's the same story, but told in a totally contemporary manner. But again, the creative expression of the same novel in a totally new context using new technologies has not taken off the charm of that particular description of architecture which exists in the original novel by Du Maurier. So I would advise you to watch this, because watch these movies in a sequence. First read the novel Rebecca, then watch the 1940 Rebecca movie, and actually before watching 2020 Rebecca on Netflix, you have to watch another movie. That's a Hindi movie made based on Rebecca. In 1964, a Hindi movie called Kohra was made based on Rebecca by that great musician, singer Hemant Kumar. It's got very haunting music also by Hemant Kumar. So look at this model of a house which they created, because in India you can't create such mansions. So the whole thing is made on a set actually. They created a set which represents the description of that house in Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Of course, a lot of Indianization was done to that story so that it could be made into a Hindi movie. So you should see this in sequence. First, read the novel Rebecca by du Maurier, written in 1939, and try and understand the description of architecture in that novel. Then watch the movie made in 1940 by Alfred Hitchcock called Rebecca. Then watch the movie in 1964 made in India in Hindi by a movie called Kora. And then you see the latest version of Rebecca. Rebecca has remained an all-time classic for the sheer beauty of creative expression using a language, English language, of course, but then how that has transformed into from 1930s to 2020, almost 100 years, but still it hasn't lost the charm of creative expression which exists. Okay. Another wonderful creative creative expression, which I have particularly liked a lot, is, have you heard of the author called Arthur Haley? Again, Arthur Haley used to be, he is still one of the wonderful novelists of our times, that is in 70s, 1970s. His books are very popular. What is very interesting about Arthur Haley is that he used to write about one particular discipline in one novel. So the Final Diagnosis is a book about hospitals and doctors. So he has written a book called Hotel, which is all about hotel. It's a novel actually, storytelling, all about hotel industry, 5-star hotel environment or hotel environment. Then there is something called Airport, which is all about the world of flying and airport, what happens in airports. But they are all in story format, wonderful, very, very creative expression. But this author has absolutely no relationship to any of these disciplines. He's not a doctor, he's not an engineer, he's not a flying person. But his observation is so fantastic. His creative expression using language of of a particular discipline is so fantastic that you cannot believe that it is written by a person who doesn't know anything about this discipline. That means he used to do a lot of research, research into that particular field, and and write the novel. So the Final Diagnosis is a fascinating novel about hospitals. And we, in our time when we were students, in fact, our teachers told us, you read this novel first and then design a hospital. Before designing, you must read this novel, because this novel is so beautifully structured by Arthur Haley that when you read this novel, you can visualize the hospital in which the events take place. So I would recommend this, because all of you are architects. You should read this. And in fact, you should read all Arthur Haley's work one by one, because they are all description about build forms, in a very contemporary, I can say it is contemporary because it's all about modern architecture and modern living, not like Rebecca's, not by like Daphne du Maurier's 1930s writing. This is more contemporary writing, 70s, 80s, like that. So, and this novel was also made into a movie called The Young Doctors, which is again available. You can see it. But again, a wonderful creative expression of language. Then there is another novel. Have you heard of Irving Stone?
Yes.
Yes, Irving Stone again was a wonderful author whose one book, he has written many books, particularly two books I liked by him. One is called Lust for Life, which is the story of Vincent van Gogh, the artist. The other is called, I think it is called The Passionate Mind, if I remember right. It is about Sigmund Freud, the writer the
Philosopher.
person who spoke about psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
The passion, I think it's called The Passionate Mind or something like that. I don't remember. But Irving Stone's book Lust for Life is a fascinating creative expression using wonderful language to talk about uh, Vincent van Gogh's life. Very, very interesting novel. It talks about what was in the mind of Vincent van Gogh as an artist. It was also made into a film in 1956. Lust for Life was also made into a film. So we are talking about creative expressions. Now let me come to one more novel, which is an Indian novel called Nalikatta. Nalikatta is a term which is very popular among architects as a build form, traditional build form of Kerala. It's called Nalikatta or a Chatushala. So, but this came as a novel in 1950s by an author called Vasudevan Nair, M.T. Vasudevan Nair. He got a he got the award, Sahitya Academy Award for this writing this novel. Of course, it is in Malayalam. The original should be read in Malayalam, but English translation, I think Hindi translation is also available. It has actually been translated into 14 different languages. Hindi also is there, I think, Nalikatta. It's a wonderful, again, creative expression of language in which architecture is explained. The relationship of architecture and culture of people is very beautifully explained in this novel, Nalikatta, in which Nair community lives in Kerala. I used to live in matrilineal family. Nalikatta is a Taravada or a family home, which gets sort of inherited from daughter to daughter. It's a eldest daughter in a family who inherits the Nalikatta or the community's home, family's home. So this is another wonderful expression of using language in which architecture is described in a very interesting manner. So this now I will take you to poetry, a little bit of poetry. I'm talking more about Malayalam here. Somewhat about Hindi I have explained to you through Ramayana, but because I am though a born Malayali, but Hindi speaking guy. But then in Malayalam there is a very interesting poet called Kavalam Narayana Panikar. He was a poet, playwright, theatre director, very famous person in his time, and he was given the Sangeet Natak Academy Award also. He had translated Shakuntalam, Kalidasa's works and all that has been translated into Malayalam. So, but he is most remembered not for all this. He has done wonderful, great things and created 26 Malayalam plays based on Sanskrit dramas as well as Shakespeare's works. He was instrumental in doing all this, converting them into Malayalam, and they are being put up on stage in Malayalam, all these kind of plays which is written by him. But he is most remembered for a very short poem, beautiful lyrics. And I'm showing you this. This is in Malayalam. And what is this poem about? It is a description of environment, both natural and built. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines. This is I'm showing you in Malayalam, but I'll show you the translation in English. And I'll give you some YouTube links. This poem continues to be a favorite even today for many musicians to be sung in contemporary ways. So I'll send you YouTube links. You must sit and watch all those, and I'll show you the translation. But when you listen to the musical version of this poem, although the poet did not create the musical version, the poet just wrote as a description of the built and natural environment. Built environment is there, but it is the natural environment, the built environment within the natural environment. Okay, so this is the poem, but look at the translation. Just read the translation. It just, there cannot be any rhyme or rhythm in this because it is translated into English. That get lost because the original rhyme and rhythm is there in the Malayalam language, which you will be able to experience when you listen to that in Malayalam language as a musical expression. But it goes like this: a banyan tree should have a platform. I hope you can understand that. That means if there is a banyan tree, it remains naked unless you build a platform or a chabutra around it. All right. So a banyan tree must have a platform and also a temple nearby. So it's a beautiful description of how architecture can evolve around a natural environment. A banyan tree should have a platform and a temple nearby, and there should be a pond close to this banyan tree. So now you have 3 elements: a pond, a platform, and a temple. Then the pond should be for bathing, but it should be full of lotus, red lotus. All right. So now you are building activity within that natural and built environment. And once you have taken bath, there should be sacred sandal paste to apply after the bath. That means chandan should also will be available, so that after bath you apply chandan on your matha. Okay. So very simple, very 4 lines, but it expresses so much about the relationship of human being to the built environment and the natural environment. And then just 3, 4 lines, one which says flower should have fragrance. Like a flower should have fragrance. I mean, what is a flower without fragrance? So just the way a flower has fragrance, a gentleman should have a character, should have character. That means a man or a human being should have character. The character of a human being is just like what is fragrance to a flower. So similarly, a pretty girl who is your daughter should have some virtues. That means if you have a pretty daughter, she should have virtues. That virtues of a daughter is equivalent to the character in a gentleman, and which is equivalent to the fragrance of a flower. What a beautiful poetic expression of human character, human beings. And then it ends with a country should have a king with very supportive ministers. That means a king is worthless if the ministers are not supportive to the king, right? So a country should have a king with very supportive ministers. And of course, the country should have citizens who live for the sake of the nation. That means citizens must be patriotic to the country in which they live. So it's a very beautiful 9-line poem which became very famous, and he was given Sahitya Academy Award for this. And this poetry which was actually created, converted into music by so many people. So I am sharing about 7 YouTube links. You can watch in any order, or first to the last, or whatever. But I'm sure you will enjoy this because you will get the meaning when you listen to the way it is sung.
So in that list of authors that you showed us, there's one
Mhm.
very important author I think you must have missed.
Mhm.
Ayn Rand.
Oh yeah, Ayn Rand is more contemporary. Yeah, of course I missed. But Ayn Rand, of course I missed because she has spoken. She has spoken very, very frankly about architecture. That is, uh, that you must. I thought you all know about Ayn Rand, right? Anybody who has not heard about Ayn Rand?
No, sir. You know,
You have not heard?
I have heard. I mean, yeah. I said we know about
Have you
her.
heard?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there is a novel by Ayn Rand called The Fountainhead,
Yes, sir. Read it.
which is also made into an English film in 1950s. It's called The Fountainhead. The actor is Cary Grant. I think Cary Grant is the actor. Cary Grant has done the role of Howard Rourke, the architect. Howard Rourke is an architect who is non-compromising in nature. That
Gary
whole
Cooper
novel
is
is
the
about.
actor.
Hmm?
Gary Cooper is the actor who
Oh,
plays Howard
Gary
Rock.
Cooper. Yeah, not Gary. Yeah, Gary Cooper, not Cary Grant. Correct. So read the novel first, then watch the movie. The movie is not as good as the novel. The novel is fascinating. Uh, because you will enjoy the novel because it's all about architecture. And she was asked once, who is your model for that, the role model for that character, Howard Rourke, which you created? And guess whom she mentioned? Ayn Rand. People think that Corbusier was the role model, but that is not true. Ayn Rand was very close to Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright was her good friend.
Okay.
In fact, Frank Lloyd Wright designed a house for her. So the description of a house which is there in the novel Fountainhead is actually the house which Frank Lloyd Wright designed for Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was a kind of a philosopher. She was not actually a writer. She happened to write because she was a philosopher. So all his books are basically philosophies. She has written only 2 novels. One is called this Fountainhead. The other is called The Atlas Shrugged, and she has written a play called Anthem. So only she has created 3 works of fiction, but rest is all her books like the For the New Intellectual, and there are so many books she has written. They are all philosophies actually, and her philosophy means she believes in the philosophy of selfishness and philosophy of individualism. You can read if you are interested. You can read all. I have read all her books. Interesting philosophy she has come out with, uh, but it didn't last for long. It lasted as long she lasted, and for some more time. Her philosophy and followers of her philosophy were there till 1970s and maybe till 80s. But after that, not many people really follow her. But she was very strong. She had a lot of strong followers in 60s and 70s all over the world actually. But her novel remains a classic. That is The Fountainhead as well as Atlas Shrugged. Atlas Shrugged takes a lot of time to read. It's a big book. It takes a long time to read. But Fountainhead is worth reading if you haven't read. And you can watch the movie also after that. Okay, thanks for reminding me, Janil. That's a author I missed out. I thought
Yes.
you might know about her because that's why I thought of her, but I thought Ayn Rand is much more popular than Du Maurier or any of those other authors I spoke about. Okay, anything
So
else? Yeah.
also one thing, like we are talking about language and culture. So
Hmm.
this is something that I've noticed in India. Okay, so
Mhm.
it's like when we are asking something, कि भैया ये केला है क्या, भैया ये सेब है क्या. So
Mhm.
we use that syntax. So now when it gets translated in English, I've heard kids ask their mothers, "Mama, is this painting by this painting is by M.F. Hussain?" No. So that, yeah, ending with no is like
In
it's like
English, ending with no in English and kya in Hindi. Correct. You are right.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So now that grammatically speaking and everything, that isn't part of English language. But still
Yes.
the very the syntax that culture creates in your mind.
Hmm. It's again, it's a different kind of evolution in Indian context. This adding no while speaking English is actually a habit which most English speaking people in India picked up from Anglo Indians. People from Goa, they add this word no to in their conversation. No and man. No man. It's a very much Bombaya way of speaking actually. Am I right? The Bombay way of speaking English. Yeah, it's a Bombay way of speaking English because a lot of Anglo-Indians had settled from in Bombay and Goa and all. So they used to use this. It's become part of our way of expression in India actually when we speak English.
Even when you hear something like I'm saying that only, मतलब मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ.
Exactly. Yeah, we are like that only. No, we are like that only.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out. And yes, I mean, since it is India, but then different countries have their, even when French are speaking English, they have like a different.
Yes. They have nuances. These are called nuances of language, nuances of expression of language. Yeah, it varies from place to place.
And
for example, an average American, in every 2 sentences, they have to use the 4-letter word, correct? They don't. Yeah, you go anywhere in America, even on TV, you see news anywhere. When Americans speak, if they don't speak out the 4-letter word in the 3rd sentence, they are not American. Simple. Simple as that. So it's become part of their vocabulary actually. It's not a swear word anymore. I mean, it's just part of their culture actually, using the 4-letter word all the time.
So, but then what happens when, now when we look at the authors like Chetan Bhagat, now they have like sort of shamelessly used these nuances in their English novels.
See, yes, this is evolution. This is actually evolution and transformation. There is also a research which says that a language doesn't remain a language after say about 1000 years. There's a big change in the way language is used. That languages change. Languages also change, subject to change, because of so many generations are using it, right? Each generation adds something and deletes something. So how long can you expect a language to remain pure?
Right.
And in fact, if a language is not used, but if it is a classical language and if it is not being used, say Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is not used, it is not changing, it is still pure. You can't change it now. You can't change the purity of Sanskrit because it will change only if you are continuously using. Nobody speaks Sanskrit, so Sanskrit has remained. Latin hasn't changed. Latin is pure classical language. Sanskrit is pure classical language, right? But all other languages, see, Marathi has changed. Our languages which we usually use for day-to-day communication, it is bound to change over a period of time. And especially 1000 years is a long time. How many generations? Correct.
True.
So it is like that. So, but at the same time, the fact remains that language is the root of creative expression. All creative expressions, primarily in the form of poetry, literature, novels, etc., the root is language, and language appears as terminologies in creative expressions which needs manual skills like art, sculpture, architecture. They need actually our manual skills, correct, of doing things. So in that, language appears only as a expression or a name tag to different parts of that particular creative expression, isn't it?
Yes, sir. True.
Okay, so I think we will have a break of a couple of days now. I want you all to think over this, and 3rd session maybe we will organize a little later because it's all about terminologies, language and terminologies in architecture. That I need some time to sort of talk to you about. So we'll conclude this session here. I'll share this presentation so that you can go through all that again. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay then. Okay. Take care. Bye.